We are ascended. Power overwhelming. Hello there everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, here to continue on with our first edition Pathfinder Cleric guide. We have reached the pinnacle of their spellcasting powers. We are now going to talk about their 9th level spells, and all of these spells are going to have a relatively incredible amount of power behind them, but not all of them are created equal. In fact, some of them are not really up to par as far as 9th level spells go. Heck, there are even some 8th level spells that can outperform these pretty handily. But we're not going to go through every single last spell, obviously, but we are going to cover the ones that are going to be pretty broadly useful across multiple builds, but will still kind of try to lean in with this one, at least go along with some of the theming that we've had going with like trying to summon and really help to level or tip the scales on the battlefield. But before we get into all of that, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then why not go down there and hit the like button and share the video far and wide. Now we'll start digging into this here, and for our first 9th level spell, we actually have two here coming up that were talked about before, but because they're on the Cleric spell list, they become instant must-haves. The first is Mass Heal. This has a range of 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 caster levels. You target one or more creatures, no two of which can be more than 30 feet apart. This works like the heal spell, but it restores 250 hit points. It still removes that whole host of negative debuffs and effects that could be applied to the target, and the fact that it's bumped up to 250 hit points, that's going to keep just about anybody in your party up to near tip-top fighting shape and able to keep going long past whatever normal limits may have been in place before. Next, we have Energy Drain. You fire a ray of negative energy at a target that's within 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 caster levels, and inflict 2d4 temporary negative levels. 24 hours after, the target must make a fortitude save. The DC is equal to the spell save DC for each negative level. So if you rolled an 8, they have to save 8 times against the spell save DC. If it succeeds, that negative level is removed. On failure, the negative level then becomes permanent. So if your target somehow survives being hit with this and go through the rest of the fight and manages to get away, there's a decent chance that they are going to be, the next time you encounter them, they may actually be weaker, which is going to be a definite benefit to you and your allies, especially since you can probably hit them with this again. Heck, if you have this prepared a couple of times, say you hit an opponent with this twice, and you say get lucky, roll 8 the first time, and then get about 5 on the next one, that's 13 temporary negative levels. Probably nobody's walking away from that, and even if they manage to, what are the odds that they manage to make the save all 13 times? Sure, your DM may decide to do that, but most DMs that I know, or at least the ones that I've grown up with and learned from, typically will try to roll it out to make it relatively fair. Maybe not let them be completely decreased down 13 negative levels. You know, I might give them like 4 or 5, but you still want the players to have had a lasting impact on the target. Not make them feel like they are completely cheated, but you still want to give them that little bit of a challenge. But going on from there, to keep within theme for the build and the domains that we've opted to go with, we are going to pick up the Gate spell. You conjure a gate to a specified plane within 100 feet plus 10 feet per caster level. You can either hold the gate open for you and others to travel through, or use it to call up to twice your hit dice in a kind of creature or specific creatures. Deities and unique entities can be called, but cannot be controlled. Specific beings can only have up to your hit dice for you to control them. So this can have a pretty broad range of impacts. It's really hard to power scale this overall, but really the possibilities are so incredibly endless, especially if you're calling in creatures that have their own spell-like abilities to help aid you and your friends in combat, and the fact that you're able to control them. However, if you're calling deities or unique entities, that's going to depend a lot on DM caveat, on the DM's decision making there. Now, the creatures called are probably going to be the same or within a step or two of alignment with you, but a lawful good outsider is not necessarily going to have their morals line up with a lawful good cleric. They may be just a little bit more hardline, maybe even bordering to near lawful neutral in their outlook. This is a hard thing of, you have sinned, you have not atoned for it, therefore you are going to be dealt with appropriately. And while appropriately may be seen as somewhat extreme to the players, to the being summoned, it may make perfect sense to them. Now, they're not going to say execute the rogue for having been a thief and stealing, but they may take them and place them into whatever extraplanar equivalent of a stockade is, and divest them of their wealth, and potentially even impact the rest of the party, depending on how much of the rogue's thievery contributed to the party's funds and financial successes. So that can introduce some interesting effects there. But by and large, unless your DM is out to just screw you every single time you use this, this is probably going to be a spell that does absolute wonders for you and your allies. Now, going on from there, we have Overwhelming Presence. This is one that lets you reach out 100 feet plus 10 feet per caster level and affects one creature per caster level, no two of which can be more than 30 feet apart. For 1 round per caster level, these creatures that fail a will save prostrate themselves before you. Flying creatures are forced to land in order to do so, and these are helpless for the duration of the spell, but each turn they may attempt a new save as a full round action that doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. A creature that recovers early from this spell after 1 round will take 1d6 wisdom drain and be staggered for 1d4 rounds. So, pretty handy debuff for them to get slapped with when they succeed. And creatures that make their initial save are staggered for 1 round, so even on the absolute pinnacle of success that they could have with this, they resist the initial casting of the spell, they're staggered for 1 round, which by the time you get 9th level spells is not the most incredible thing to have be inflicted upon your enemies, but the fact that this is what hits when they succeed, that's actually pretty nice. The fact that they are helpless for several rounds is really damn cool. It makes flying creatures land, and when they save, if they save early, they take 1d6 wisdom drain, which is going to make them more vulnerable to other spells targeting wisdom saving throws. And they're going to be staggered for 1d4 rounds afterwards, which is going to eat into the opponent's action economy. That's going to be incredibly helpful on so many levels to you and your allies. And the fact that you can pick out a cluster of creatures and affect several at this point, as long as they're grouped together nicely enough, this is going to be awesome for you to make use of. And bear in mind, I said we pick up Gate and any of these other spells. You automatically know all the Cleric spells. You're only going to be limited potentially on alignment or your channeling options. So that's just something to bear in mind there, but otherwise you really know all the spells overall. Also, whatever your DM says goes as well, but that's so specific that we can't really delve too deeply into that. But what we can delve deeply into is our next spell, which is Miracle. Request a miracle from the higher power you serve, whether it's a concept, an abstract idea, or any of the number of deities or pantheons that might be out there. And you can do this too. Duplicate any cleric spell of 8th level or lower. Duplicate any other spell of 7th level or lower. Everard's Black Tentacles, bam, you can duplicate it. Why you're burning a 9th level spell to duplicate a 4th level spell, I'm not 100% sure, but you could really do far worse than to duplicate the Black Tentacles spell. That is an awesome spell that actually does remain useful up into even the higher levels, but you have some better options using Miracle. You can also use this to undo the harmful effects of spells like Feeble Mind or Insanity, or you can do anything that has any effect in line with the above options. However, for greater effects, this will cost you 25,000 gold pieces in diamond dust to be expended in order to handle and channel these raw divine energies that will allow you to raise fallen allies to swing a pivotal battle in your favor. So massive pitched battle. Cast this, make the request, bam, so many allies raise up to help turn the tide for you. Or move you and allies with all your gear through planar barriers to a specific locale with no chance of error. Or protect a city from natural disaster. This is the scope and effect that Miracle potentially has. I mean, this is almost an outright I win spell for you to cast. It's really limited only by your imagination and what your DM is willing to allow you to do. Again, if my players are prepared, they have established a good relationship with their deity, and they burn the 25,000 gold pieces in diamond dust, well, as long as they're not just looking at outright insta-killing everything, everywhere all at once, they're probably going to be able to pull off whatever it is they're looking to do with this spell. I mean, it's pretty broad in what it allows, so definitely tread carefully, make your players aware that casting this, make your general guidelines pretty clear on the kinds of things you won't or will allow, what you may leave up to chance for them to implore their deity of choice or their power concept of choice, and just let them know and help them to understand ahead of time, just so that they don't feel like they've been screwed over if they cast this and you decide to tell them, no, that doesn't happen, here's what happens instead. So just something to keep in mind. Next, a spell that is well worth avoiding, especially for a 9th level spell. There's definitely a couple others that could have made this list pretty handily, but this stood out to me, especially with Tomb Legion having been recently covered. We have Canopic Conversion. Deal 1d6 damage per caster level, maxing out at 20d6 to kill your target and place their organs in 4 canopic jars to raise the corpse as a Dune mummy 1d4 rounds later. It's not under your control unless you hold one of the canopic jars. Given that there's 4 of them, this means 4 people could potentially be giving it directions, interesting enough. But there are also rituals that allow you to unseal the jars to give some instant effect kind of commands. If you undertake a 10-minute ritual that allows you to unseal all 4 jars, you can give the mummy a command, but it ceases to be under your control. It's similar to the Geese. I used to know how to pronounce that, now I'm blanking on it, but point is, it mimics the effect of the quest spell, essentially, to send them on a journey to accomplish some task, and typically the instructions in it include, also, you're not allowed to harm me or these people, and then you send it off to go accomplish whatever. Now, that's pretty pathetic overall for a 9th level spell. I mean, you have Tomb Legion as an option as well that's probably going to produce much greater effects for you. Again, mummies, pretty powerful undead, but for a 9th level spell, especially in comparison to the other options that you have that we just have gone over here, this just doesn't really stack up. I mean, Tomb Legion is better than this in several ways. I mean, having, 1d4 some odd mummies following you around for a week, or guarding a specific place for 7 months, that's incredible, especially since it doesn't count against any of the number of hit dice for undead that you're allowed to have. I mean, that, and it's just so much. This is just so terrible, and there are other spells on here that really aren't all that great, but what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? What spells might you recommend, or what are some other spells you might recommend to other players that they just avoid? Or what specific circumstances might some spells be incredibly great in? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'll certainly do my best to try to respond, engage in discussion. I know I haven't been keeping up the greatest with that other than reading through the comments, but still, let us know your thoughts down below, and if you've made it this far, you must have enjoyed something, so why not go down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, good gaming to you all, and you all have yourselves a good night.